I grew up in a middle-income family. While my parents both worked decent jobs, they had 6 months to feed, i.e., my parents themselves, me, and my 3 siblings. So, needless to say, we did struggle a little bit. Hand-me-downs were the norm for us, and so were frozen and cheap meals. The only reason we even managed to own a house was because my grandmother had left the house in my dad's name. We lived in a pretty good neighborhood where families belonging anywhere from the middle to high income lived. The house next to mine had been empty for a couple of years after I was born, according to my parents, until a new family moved in. They had a son of the same age as me. He was the only kid in the neighborhood that was my age, so even though we didn't end up going to the same school since he was homeschooled, my parents and I made the effort to get the both of us to hang out more. His parents were more than welcoming of me and often invited me over. As time passed, the boy, John, and I became the closest of friends. John remained homeschooled for his entire schooling years, and his only interaction with someone his age was me. Thankfully, since I attended a public school, I had more than enough knowledge to teach him about the appropriate ways to socialize with peers his age. His dad, William, was especially grateful for me. Somewhere along the years, William had realized his mistake in forcing homeschooling on his son. He had wanted his son to be more well-rounded and wanted to give his son a head start on learning about the family business. William began to see how much his son had actually lacked being able to communicate with other children his age. But when he saw John struggling less and less after spending time with me, he would show me his gratitude in many different ways. William was a man of very few words, so he never outwardly said, "Thank you," but he would send me home with more than enough food for my entire family and would buy me and my siblings little gifts for our birthdays or any other occasion. While William was grateful for me, John's mother, Margaret, was not so happy with me. She hated that William treated me so well because she felt that he was being harsh on their son, but nice to the neighbor's kid. She never made her distaste for me unapparent. She had always made snide remarks towards me and would constantly try to stop William from giving me things. However, William would never listen to her, and sometimes, out of spite towards her, he would give me more things. Aside from the fact that the way William treated me, Margaret had many other issues with her husband. As a result, the two of them would constantly fight and yell at each other. There was not a single day where the house was quiet. It began to affect John. He began to withdraw even more into himself. It took months of coaxing, but I was finally able to prove myself worthy enough for him to share his thoughts and feelings with me. That was when we were 13. Having had me by his side and having a shoulder to lean on lifted the weight off of his shoulders. We became closer as the years passed. I developed feelings for him somewhere over the years, but never acted on them. There was only one point when John didn't share something with me. We were 17 at the time this happened. For reference, John came over to my house looking distraught. His face was pale and his eyes were wide. He kept pacing back and forth in my room. "John, are you okay? You seem really distressed. You know you can talk to me, right?" "I know that, but this is something I don't think I can tell you." "You don't have to tell me everything, but if you're comfortable, just tell me a bit about it. You know that talking about what's upsetting you always makes you feel better. It's just, my mother and I had a huge fight. I reached a breaking point with how she treated my dad. I snapped at her, and she said something really hurtful. That's why I'm so upset." "Oh man, I'm so sorry that happened. Do you think you could tell me what she said?" "It's really painful. I don't want to talk about it." "Yeah, that's okay. Family can be complicated, but remember, no matter what, they're still your family. You shouldn't let your anger ruin your relationships with them. Take time to process your feelings." "Yeah, I guess so. Thanks for listening, Maria. You always know how to calm me down." At that time, I wanted John to stay with his family because I knew that despite their weirdness and arguments, at the end of the day, they only had his best interests at heart. Little did I know the real truth. If I had known the truth, I would never have suggested John forgiving and staying with his parents. Actually, his mother, to be more specific. In the years that passed, John and I graduated high school and enrolled ourselves in the same college. John did more of the distance learning thing while I attended college. Since I had been working since I turned 16, I was able to save up enough to rent an apartment. William helped me a little bit as well. So while I attended college, I was able to move out into my own space. As a result, John and I would hang out more often without the watchful eyes of our parents. Eventually, we both realized that we had big-time feelings for each other. After an awkward confession on both of our parts, we began dating. My parents were ecstatic for us, while John's parents had more neutral reactions. William congratulated us with a calm demeanor, whereas Margaret just grunted at us in disapproval. Anyways, we chose not to focus on his mother's reaction. After we graduated college, John proposed to me, and within that year, we got married. At that time, I thought I had won at life. I mean, my childhood best friend was the person I married. He was there with me from the start, and vice versa. I really loved him with everything I had. After we got married, John began to travel a lot more for work. He didn't want me to stay alone for too long, so he asked me to move in with his parents. I was hesitant, but John tried his best to convince me. I don't know about moving in with your parents. Your mom's never been a fan of me. I know, but listen, we'd have our own space, a whole floor to ourselves, even our kitchen. I want you safe, and being with my family will put my mind at ease. It's almost like living alone. I mean, they could visit, or I could visit them if they want. Please hear me out. This could even be a chance for you and my mom to get along better. I believe this could help mend things. All right. If it means that much to you, I'll give it a shot. But I hope this doesn't make things worse between us. Thanks, babe. I promise I'll do my best to make sure everything goes smoothly. I knew that his reasoning made no sense, but I accepted his request, and only because I wanted him to feel better when he wasn't near me. The fact that I would have some privacy made me feel better. Plus, if anything happened, my parents lived right next door and I could crash there. In the next month, the both of us had moved back in with his parents. However, I quickly realized that John hadn't been completely honest with me. You see, I wasn't going to be alone in the house with his parents. I was going to be alone with only his mother, Margaret. Whenever John went out on a business trip, he did so at his dad's command. William made John go take care of businesses at a different place while he, too, was away on business. This meant that I was stuck living under the same roof as the woman that hated me for days or even weeks. Thankfully, Margaret never really did anything much to me. She would make a rude comment here or there, and the worst would be when she would purposely have no food made for me, after specifically asking me what I wanted to eat. I would usually be too tired from work to care, so I would either whip myself up a quick meal or I would order in. Anyway, as long as I stayed in my room, nothing significant happened. That was until one day John called me and asked me to search through his office for a file. He wanted me to scan the contents of the file and send them over to him. I had to rummage through his messy drawers for that file, but while I was looking for it, I felt something off with one of the drawers. I felt around it a little more and noticed that it felt a lot more hollow than the others. I realized that the drawer had a false bottom. Now, I know that it's wrong to snoop, but my curiosity got the best of me and I managed to open the false bottom. There was one file. I couldn't help but wonder what was so important and such a big secret that John had to hide it in his office drawer. I didn't know if Margaret would have been snooping around, so I walked over to the door and looked around. Before shutting the door and slightly locking it, I opened the file. My heart raced as I read the contents of it. In the file was a paternity test between John and William. and William was not John's father. I was shocked. I did not know how to react. I mean, how could John have kept such a large secret from me? John was the spitting image of his mother, so I never thought to question his paternity. I couldn't help but wonder if William knew. Before I could let my thoughts spiral further, I decided I needed to put the file back and send John the scans he needed. But before that, my gut told me to take a picture of the test. Once I had done that, I hurriedly put everything away and managed to find the file John wanted. I sent him the scans and quietly retreated into my room. I spent the next few hours trying not to dwell on the new information I had just learned. I wanted to talk to John about it, but I felt like that was a conversation I would rather have in person. Just as the tension in me began to ease, Margaret knocked on my door. I told her to come in, and I was immediately greeted with a scowl as she entered my room. "Yes, how can I help?" "Spare me the act. I know you found out about our secret." "What are you talking about?" "Don't play games. I saw the false bottom of John's drawer open. I know you read the document." "Fine. You got me. But tell me, does William know?" "Ha ha, William. That old geezer doesn't know a thing. If he did, we'd be on the streets. All he ever wanted was an heir. I was lucky enough to get away with the fact that John wasn't his kid only because John is a spitting image of me." "How could you deceive him like that? After all he's done for you?" "Spare me your moral judgments. I'm not the only one betraying him. John's in on it too. He's gotten used to this lifestyle and he won't let it go." That can't be right. What if I tell William everything?" "Oh, please, you think some peasant like you can ruin our little game of pretend? I'd simply make William believe you're lying to cause chaos. He'll choose us over you any day." "You won't get away with this for long." "Keep dreaming. I've never liked you, Maria. I've been trying to push John away from you for years. This is the perfect reason for him to find someone of his social standing." "You won't get away with this forever. The truth will come out. That's how it always works." "Oh, please, save your fairy tales for someone who cares. Good luck with that, though. If you're smart enough, you won't interfere." With that, she walked out of the room. My heart was pounding. Every question I had for John, Margaret had answered them. I was disgusted with both of them. I knew that Margaret didn't like me and showed it, but I never thought she would stoop so low. And worst of all was John. How could he deceive the man that had raised him that way? How long had he known? Did he feel any remorse whatsoever? On top of that, would he go along with Margaret's plan to leave me? I barely got any sleep that night because my thoughts kept me awake. The next day passed in a haze. William had returned from his work trip. I couldn't look him in the eye because of how guilty I felt. I wanted to tell him everything, but I knew that if I tried, Margaret would find a way to turn the tables on me and make me the bad guy. That night, William asked for the three of us to have dinner together. I silently ate my food except for the times that William asked me questions about work. At some point during dinner, Margaret told William that she wanted to go on a vacation with John. "William, I've been missing John, and I think it'll be a great idea for us to go on a 2-week trip to Italy together." Well, John has been working hard. He does deserve a break." "Doesn't John have a lot of work commitments? I mean, I'm no expert, but won't his absence affect the business?" "Please. William managed the business for years before John joined. A short break won't hurt." "That's true, and John could use some time off." "All right, you can go, and I'll handle things here." "Thank you, dear." "Maria, why don't you join them?" "Oh, that won't work. It's supposed to be a mother-son bonding time. Besides, it will feel like a third wheel." "Well, what do you think, Maria? Would you like to join them?" "Oh, she probably has her own plans. Don't worry about her." "Let's allow Maria to make that decision, huh?" I knew why Margaret wanted to go on this trip. I was about to say that I wasn't okay with the trip, but I felt a sharp kick in my shin. I winced in pain as I realized that Margaret had kicked me under the table. I looked at her and noticed her sharp glare. I wanted to tell on her so bad, but I knew it wouldn't lead me anywhere. I felt like I was stuck until I suddenly had a brilliant idea. I realized that I could use their time away to tell William everything. So I shut my mouth and nodded that I was okay with the trip. Margaret looked satisfied, and William told Margaret she was free to go on her trip. That night, I called John and asked him about this trip. "Are you going on this trip with your mother?" "Yeah, I don't really have a choice." "That's not true. You do have a choice. You can choose not to go along with her plans." "Everything is just so messed up, and honestly, a lot of it is because of you." "What do you mean? How is any of this my fault?" "If you had respected my privacy back then, none of this would have happened. There's a lesson I didn't tell you about everything." "When did you even find out you're not William's son?" "Remember how a couple of years ago I came over to your place looking really distressed because of this huge fight I had with my mom? Yeah, she dropped that bomb on me during that fight." "Did you consider telling William about it?" "I did. I even threatened her to spill the secret, but she laughed it off, said if I told William, he'd throw us out. So we're stuck keeping this secret. Now that you know, I can't keep you around anymore." "Did our relationship mean anything to you at all?" "Of course it did. But when you found out about the secret, I knew I had to let you go. Your strong conscience could ruin everything I've been working for." With that, he hung up the call. I couldn't believe that this man was the man I had loved. Was this always a part of him? Or was this something he had become out of greed? I cried myself to sleep that night. I couldn't believe that all our years of friendship and love just crashed into something so disgusting. How could he let go of me so easily? I had treated him like he was the most precious thing to me, while I was just something that could be easily thrown away to him. I woke up the next morning fully ready to take revenge. John had returned home that morning and silently packed his bags for his vacation. He and Margaret were set to leave in the afternoon. I didn't spare him a glance. My heart hurt, but I knew I was doing the right thing. William had gone on another short business trip for the next 2 days, so I had to wait for him to come back for my plan to start. After John and Margaret left, I busied myself by looking through their stuff. Not surprisingly, the false bottom in John's drawer was empty. I couldn't find the file anywhere. I guess Margaret must have gotten rid of it. It was okay, though. I had a picture of it. Then I waited to collect evidence of what John and Margaret were up to. Sure enough, John posted stories on his private Instagram account where only his closest friends and family followed him. He posted stories of him going on dates with multiple other women, and even posted a story of him thanking his mother for introducing him to so many wonderful women. Even though my heart was breaking and anger was boiling under my skin, I took screenshots of every story. I then called William and told him I had an emergency and needed him home immediately. William assured me that he would be home by nighttime. True to his word, he showed up by 9 p.m. He hurried over to me and asked me if everything was okay. I told him that I was not okay and told him the real reason why Margaret and John had gone on that trip: to find John a new wife. William looked shocked and asked me if I was being serious. I showed him the screenshots. William's shock turned to anger and disgust. William stuttered as he asked me why they would do this. I told him that I had something important to tell him, but I needed him to sit down for that. He sat down and fearfully asked me what I had to say. I took out the printout of the picture of the test and showed it to him. William sat there silently for a while as he processed what he was reading. I gave him some time before telling him everything I had found out in the past few days. William's hurt turned to anger. Without a word, he called up his banks and canceled his credit cards. He knew that Margaret and John were depending on them for their travel because they always used those for trips. He also went ahead and canceled John's office card, so they had no money that way either. Once he was done with that, William felt slightly calmer. I apologized for throwing everything at him at once. I'm so sorry, William. None of this should have happened. There's no need for you to apologize. I never imagined Margaret could go to such lengths. I'm glad this revelation happened while I'm still in control of the business. What are your plans now? I'm worried John and Margaret might try to come back. I've made up my mind. I'm going to divorce Margaret and remove both of them from this house. I'm with you on the divorce. I'll also file one against John. I'll move out too, don't worry. No, Maria, you're not going anywhere. If you're willing, I'd like to pass the business down to you. I've always seen you as a daughter, and I trust you to carry on the legacy. William, I don't know what to say. I'd be honored to continue what you've built. That's settled then. We'll make this right together, Maria. The days after that were filled with sadness and anger. William filed for divorce, and so did I. Margaret and John tried contacting us, but neither of us picked up the calls or answered the texts. William had managed to pull some strings and managed to get both of us restraining orders against Margaret and John. When the calls got too annoying, I finally picked up. What the hell did you tell my dad, Maria? I haven't said anything to him. Then why are his cards cancelled and our numbers blocked? What have you done? I didn't tell him anything. I just showed him the proof. That's impossible. I burned it all. Not everything. I had enough evidence. I took a photo of the document you thought you destroyed. You're heartless for doing this to us. You're the heartless one. You and Margaret chose to keep this secret from William. You have to face the consequences of your actions. You're tearing our family apart. No, you're doing it. It's the truth that's finally coming out. It's time to take responsibility. I hung up the call and blocked John and Margaret. In the weeks that followed, William and I sent our divorce papers to our respective partners. William had all of John's and Margaret's things packed and put away in a storage facility. He gave them 1 month to show up and take their things, or they would have to pay to keep their things in the facility. I quit my job and began focusing on working with William. It was hard for both of us to forget everything that had happened, but we knew that at the end of the day, we still had each other. I began to enjoy work, and the benefits I got from working with William were only a bonus. So that is my story. Thank you for listening till the end. I hope that no matter what life throws your way, you always remember to do what's right, because you never know how life will reward you.